This is fabulous. I'm the last speaker on the last panel on the last day of the conference. And lunch isn't until noon. I was very fortunate. I missed the first part of the first day because we've had a change of government, and there are certain times you don't want to be away when the new government. So I arrived just in time for the panel session on the first night, and my rear end was fresh. I hadn't sat in a chair all day, so I stayed through to the bitter end, and was fortunate to hear Peter Kenyon. That was quite remarkable. Some people couldn't last that long and missed that. Anyway, there's been a lot of really big thoughts expressed in the panel this morning, some key issues. I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to comment on A, B, C, D, and the big themes that have been running through the conference. The good stuff, the good lines have all been used. The good songs have been sung. So I'm going to focus a little bit on Nova Scotia. I'm going to try to describe what we're doing here to encourage, to enable what we've called various things: community economic development, community development, regional development, asset-based community development. We've pulled almost all the letters from the alphabet soup, and I'll throw a few more at you this morning. I am in government. My job title, Director of Decision Support, is very simple. Ministers make decisions, and we support them. And if we don't support them, then we're no longer directors of decision support. So my thesis here is that I think government has a role to play in this stuff, and that I think government can be helpful. The comment earlier about the market, the state, powerful stuff. While all of that was going on in North America, over in Scandinavia, they've continued to pay high taxes and give good services, and so the government can play a role. And there are enough examples around, I think, where those of us who work for government can draw hard. I'm retirement age, but I keep staying because I want to see it work, and sometimes it takes a long time. So what I'll do, I'm going to briefly describe Nova Scotia. We're sitting here in Antigonish on a very pleasant, leafy campus. This is not all of Nova Scotia. Those of you who flew in drove through a slice of it, but I'm going to describe the province a bit so you'll see the context we're working in. I'm going to provide just a few highlights on what we've done, and my colleague, Laurie Alexander, has some handouts which she will make available. Laurie, you can stand up in case people haven't met Laurie. She's the brains behind the operation. And then I'm going to talk just a little bit about where all this stuff might go. We do have a new government, as I mentioned, and it's a kind of optimistic time here. So first, Nova Scotia. Nova Scotia is a small province in Canada. We are subject to a federal government that's far away, has some friendly faces like Naresh, but isn't always perceived out here in the periphery as helpful as it might be. We are small geographically. You can get in a car at one end and drive to the other end in 8 hours. So that's tiny. Nobody's more than about half an hour from the sea. So it's small. Its population is small. I've seen some astonishing numbers, the Rustenburg number. I never even heard of the place, and it's got more people than Nova Scotia. We have 940,000 people or so. It's not growing. We have a kind of European-type population profile. Lots of old people, many of us getting older by the day. We lose a lot of our young people. Many people migrate to Toronto, to Calgary, to the States. That's where opportunity is seen to be. We're holding our own in population because a lot of older people come back. That's a mixed blessing. They bring their experiences back, but they come back and need health care and age gently and expensively here in Nova Scotia. We're also urbanizing. It may not seem apparent to you if you've walked down the streets of Antigonish, but we are urbanizing relatively rapidly. We are still one of the most rural provinces in the country. We have about 60% urban, 40% rural. The Canadian average is about 80-20. And most of our people live in two main centers, Halifax, about 350,000, and Sydney, the old coal and steel town at the north end of Cape Breton, about 110,000. In the Canadian context, we're not very diverse. You've been to Toronto, you've been to Montreal, you've been to Vancouver, you see the new face of Canada. We've got pretty much the old face of Canada. The Mi'kmaq were here first. They're about 4% of the population. The French and the English, this is a classic British colony. It was traded back and forth many times. Every time there was a war, Canada was kind of collateral damage and it was traded somewhere else. The English that are here, primarily Scots. If you've walked the streets of Antigonish, if you've met anybody here, chances are their name is MacDonald. There's a lot of Scots here. But they're also Irish, and the Germans came. They needed some stout Protestant laborers, and the British brought Germans into Liverpool. And so we've got a little bit of mixture. We have an African Nova Scotian community that's been here 200 years. They came as a result of the U.S. War of Independence. The Loyalists fled north, and many of them brought their slaves with them, and many of the people who came were also free. So there's an African community, again, fairly small, 3-4% of the population, but it's been here for a long time. The Africans, the Acadians, the Francophone group, and the Mi'kmaq are historically on the margins, but they're tremendously compelling stories of people who have survived. We're trying to, when you talk about asset base, instead of thinking of, oh, we're poor, think of, gee, we've survived here against all odds. Surely that gives us some strength. So we're trying to build on that. Our economy, it was fish, forests, and farms, with a little interlude, about a century of coal and steel production, and tourism. It is still fishing, but fishing has changed. It's farming, it's forestry. Increasingly, it's light manufacturing. We make tires. If you're driving on Michelin tires, chances are they were made here in Nova Scotia. We have a huge education industry. This is just one of many universities, and these universities are increasingly seeing themselves as large and useful businesses. They bring people to the province. They educate not only our people, but people all around the world. We also have a growing service sector. The economy now is about 80% service, 20% manufacturing. So that's what we've got. We're changing. Every one of our sectors, the business model is turning upside down. We used to grow pigs and send them to market. You can't make money doing that anymore, so the hog industry is turning upside down. The cattle industry is turning upside down. We caught all the fish. Technology exceeded fishing, or the technology for fishing was better than the fish were at avoiding it, and we basically fished them all. So the fishing industry is changing fairly dramatically. So how do we support and enable asset-based community development? We pay homage to the legacy of Cody and Tompkins, but quite frankly, Cody and Tompkins are probably better known overseas than they are 10 kilometers away from St. FX. But it's there and it's useful, and we try to build on it. So what I'm going to do in the next few minutes is just take a page from Peter Kenyon's book. He had 8 principles. I was out too late last night and had too much to drink, so I've only got 3 themes. But I'm gonna go with themes, and I can't match the bull one. That's those of you who heard the business about bull. To me, that'll stick with me for long after I've forgotten what asset-based community development stands for.